Hi guys, happy Wednesday. It's already April 1st. Can you believe it? I was thinking I'd have a joke, but I don't have anything good for you. Sorry. So let's talk about our calculations, okay? I hope you're doing well this week. Okay, so I rewrote this problem to put it this way, right? So we have our 9/10 divided by 1800ths. And remember, my first number is what goes under the bar. The second number, what's outside the bar. Remember, this is the piece that we're going to take a look at because of the decimals. If there's any decimals here, that's what we're moving. That's what's also going to be over here outside the bar. So over here I have 2. So I'm going to move this one under the bar 2. So I rewrote this problem because remember I told you it's easier for me. It's up to you, whatever you want to do, but it's easier when I see it in this format. So now I'm taking a look. I have 90 and I'm dividing it into groups of 18. So we need to start with our estimate, right? So my estimate, I'm going to take a look. If I know, I'm going to kind of round this up to like 20. And if I know the 90 and I'm taking a look at 20, I know I can make 4 groups. So I'm going to write over here so you see what I'm doing. I'm writing 4 groups of 20. So my estimate, I know that 18 is less than 20 and 4 groups of 20 is going to be 80. So I'm going to be at about 4 and like a half, right? Because half of 20 is 10. Right? I'm going to write that here what I'm saying. Half of 20 equals 10. So I'm kind of taking my 4 groups of 20 gives me 80, and half of 20 is 10. That will give me 90. So I'm kind of looking at that as a little bit more. So my estimate is going to be somewhere around, 4.5. Okay, so I'm going to kind of write it that way again. You can do whatever you want. Remember, my estimate is just kind of giving me a good idea of, does my answer make sense? Okay, so let's talk about the division now. So we need to talk about our steps, right? Our divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. And so I'm going to start with my idea of 4. So I'm going to put that here, right? Because I know if I look here, if I have 9, I definitely cannot make any groups of 18 because 9 is less than 18. And remember, I need my groups. So let's take a look. So I put my problem off to the side because, I don't like to make it too messy and it's easier for me to read. So if I do 18 times 4, remember I start here on the right. So I'm going to do 4 times 8 is 32. So I'm going to carry my 3. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 3 is 7. So I'm going to take a look at that and see, let me think. If I have 72, right, this is 7 tens and this is 9 tens, and now I'm doing one more. If I kind of round this up, I know that this is closer. That's off by 2. If I make this 20, I can get to 92 and I'd be close. So I want to see, before I put my 4 up here, I want to see, what if I add one more group? Right, so I'm going to add it because remember, I'm lazy. I don't want to make a whole nother problem of 18 times 4. I just know, and I'm going to put that here so you see what I'm doing. Remember, this is my 5 groups. This would be like 18 times 5. So I'm going to add that. 2 plus 8 gives me 10. Remember, I'm always starting on the right. Carry my 1. 1 plus 7 is 8, plus 1 more is 9. And oh my goodness, look, that's exactly the same. So I'm going to put that up here. So this is my division. So it's 5 groups. Remember, I'm going to go back to here. So I'm going to multiply. 18 times 5 gives me 90. And I got that from over here. And then I subtract. And I get 0. So my answer here is 5. And let's go back. Look at my estimate was 4.5. Well, that's pretty close, right? So my answer does make sense. Moving on to multiplication. So just like we talked before, right, I rewrote my problem. Well, I put my number that only has the 1 digit as the second number in the problem. This also right here, the way this problem is horizontally, horizontal means left to right. This is vertical. Vertical is up and down. This actually matches right here, but remember, if it didn't and the 8 was first, I could rewrite it to look like this because we have that commutative property. So let's also begin with our estimate, as we should do each time. If I have 6 and 24 hundredths, Oops, sorry, my camera is going closer. I know that this is closer to 6 because I'm looking right here. And that's less than 5, so I'm going to round this to 6. And I'm doing that times 8. 6 times 8 gives me 48. So my estimate should be close to 48. And remember, when we talk about that, when we're multiplying, our estimates may be a little bit more distance from our actual answer because we're talking about groups. And I know here I just rounded this to 6. So just like we talked about money to use for help, this is like $6.24 to 8 people. So I know because I rounded down here, I know my answer is going to be a little bit more than the 48 because this gives me a little bit more. And I took off my 8 groups of 24 cents. Think about that for a second. If I shaved off my 24 and I took that closer to like a quarter, like 25 cents, 25 cents to 8 people would be like $2. So I'm at least 2 from my ones place away when I do this estimate. So I know my answer here should be higher than 48, right? Just like we talked about in class. We just have to kind of keep that in mind and make sense of it. Okay, so let's talk about our steps. So when I do my steps, when I multiply, right, I'm going to start on the right. 8 times 4 is 32. So I put my 2 and I'm going to carry my 3. I'm carrying my 10s. Remember, every time that I have more numbers to multiply, I keep carrying that. That goes up on top. 8 times 2 is 16, 17, 18, 19. So I'm going to put my 9 and carry my 1. 6 times 8 is 48 plus 1 is 49. And then I'm going to look up here, right? After I have my answer, then I go back to my original problem, or I can look here. And I have 2 decimal places here, which means I'm going to start behind the number and move that over 2 places. So my answer should be 49 and 92 hundredths. Well, let's look. See, that's pretty close. And we talked about how if this was 25 cents, which we see this is less than that, that's 24 hundredths, not 25 hundredths, that would be $2. So we know we're a little bit less. And $49.92 is pretty close to the $50 that we would think if that was the 25 cents. So our answer definitely makes sense. Okay, talking about our subtraction. So first off, if you see, I rewrote my problem, and let's check. By this point in the week, we should be doing this. Did you line yours up correctly? Remember, we have to line them up, and we're going to go directly in this order. We are not rewriting a subtraction problem because that changes the problem. We have to follow the order that it's in. So this number on top, and we're subtracting the second number. So it looks a lot like this, okay? And then remember I did this because my 67, remember if I don't see it, it's located behind it. So that's why that's set up like that. And remember, if that other number in your problem or any of the other numbers in your problem have values after the decimal, you have to put zeros in the part that doesn't so that you kind of have the same amount as kind of like a placeholder, and that's what would be there. Okay, so let's talk about an estimate now. I'm looking at 96 and 92 hundredths. I don't know about you, but remember, an estimate's just supposed to be a kind of like a good guess, right? Remember we talked about that before, like in science, your hypothesis. So I don't want to actually do the calculation. So I'm going to make a kind of rounding, right? To give an idea that's around it. So this 96 and 92 hundredths would round to 97, but I don't want to actually do that. Unless it's a number, it's something like this, right? Because if this was not 67 here, I would probably round this closer to like 100 and use this minus 70. But let's take a look what happens. If I round this to 97 and I'm taking away 67, do you see? And I'm going to write that over here so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's take a look. So my number in the ones place is exactly the same in each. And then over here, it's just the tens that make the difference. So in this problem, I would keep it this way because that's pretty easy for me. My ones are not going to change, but my tens, I had 9 tens and I'm taking away 6 tens. Remember, we could use like our blocks idea, or we could use dimes. If you had 9 dimes and you took away 6 dimes, you'd have 3 dimes left, or that would give you like 30 cents. So in this case, we have 3 tens or 30. Okay, so my answer should be really close to that. Okay, remember I rounded up, so it's going to be off because I'm going to have this decimal part, but it should be very close. Remember, when we add or subtract, if we make it closer to what that number is, my estimate should be very close. So now I'm just going to subtract. Remember, I start on the right and I always go top to bottom. 2 minus 0 gives me 2. 9 minus 0 gives me 9. 6 minus 7. Ooh, can I do that? No. So I have to borrow, and I cannot make it, just like we talk in class. I can't turn it around and make it 7 minus 6 because that's not what this problem says. Okay, so I have to go next door, and I call that regroup or borrow. So I'm going to take the 9, and that becomes 8, and this means 10 go over here to the 6. So 16. 16 minus 7 is going to give me 9, and 8 minus 6 gives me 2. Okay, and that's in the 10, so it's 20. So I have 29 and 92 hundredths. That is really close to 30. So my answer makes sense. Okay, how'd you do? I hope at this point you're making a lot more understanding with this and getting some more correct answers. Let me know.